Are you doing some organizing?
Nope. This is a hope chest.
Oh, is this another time travel thing? You're going back in time to have a 16th century marriage?
No, it's not that kind of hope chest. I just don't want to forget all the great ideas we had yesterday, so I am writing them down on seeds.
I like it. I'm in.
I want these to grow, you know? I want people in the future to look back and say, oh, that's what was important to people back then. Those are the tenets they lived by. And that's why we have an inclusive and just nation today.
Here, give me one of those seeds.
So stoked about that plenary yesterday. What seemed so big before doesn't seem as unattainable anymore.
Yeah, it was so great to hear about all of the amazing work that people are doing in their communities, and it makes me feel like I can actually have an impact. Like, if I get involved with the communities and the groups that I already know and am a part of.
We can make small changes that make a difference to those immediately around us.
Yes, and we can see that change and realize, hey, we actually do have an impact, and we do have
agency.
Yes.
Civic engagement. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, imagine if that grew everywhere.
It reminds me of that principle from emergent strategy.
Adrienne Marie Brown.
Small is good. Small is all. We are all philanthropists.
Trust. We the people?
Yeah, it represents the Declaration of Independence.
Why would you put that in there?
Because don't you think we the people and the intention behind these inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are still a part of who we can be as a nation?
But so many of us weren't even considered we the people. That's what I was trying to tell you yesterday. This means very different things to different people. This wasn't designed for us or by us.
But it can be. That's what I'm trying to do here.
Oh, really?
Of course.
Okay, so who was all included in We the People when the government passed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956,
You and your history buffness bringing up the past again.
The trauma and the impacts of that are very much present. The Rondo neighborhood just across the river in St. Paul was completely ruptured because that government act allowed 700 black-owned homes and 300 mostly black-owned businesses to be destroyed. Also, that Interstate 94 could cut right through their lives and their livelihood.
I'm just trying to figure out what we can do now so we have some hope for the future.
Rondo had hope. It was an amazing, thriving African-American community with hope, with people who owned homes that they loved and successful business and community and safety and belonging.
Okay,
and the government did not see the people of Rondo as we the people with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken those very rights from them.
And I'm saying these rights should belong to everyone.
$157 million of intergenerational wealth was lost. The resulting wealth and housing gap in the black community alone shows that not everybody has access to these so-called inalienable rights.
I get it, I do.
And the lack of stability and security from losing your community and then not being able to buy a home because of racial covenants and redlining.
Yes, you're right. We need healing. But we can't have healing if we're not going to move forward.
And we can't have healing if we're not willing to name the problem, address it, and tangibly deal with every aspect of it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is that in order to go from the rupture that happened in Rondo to repair, we have to be willing to look at the root cause of the harm that was done.
Yes, and we need to be willing to make space to address the problem from the perspective of those most impacted by it.
Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution.
Yes, exactly.
I hear you. Hey, you know who's doing some amazing work in Rondo toward healing?
Who?
Reconnect Rondo.
Oh yeah, they totally are. They have all sorts of cultural and economic revitalization efforts in the neighborhood.
And they have that vision to build that
land bridge. Yes, over the interstate to repair parts of the neighborhood that were lost.
Think of the possibilities that would create in that community.
Yeah, that would definitely lead to so much repair.
It would.
Oh.
Oh. Look, Jay Williams is about to come on stage. He's the board chair of the Council on Foundations, and I'm sure he has more to say about all this.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Williams. I'm the president and CEO of the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and proud board chair of the Council on Foundations. I am so excited that you have joined us here at Leading Locally and look forward to having the chance to meet and connect with so many of you over the next few days. With the help of an incredible host committee and dedicated working group, we've put together a program designed just for you. Community foundations and place-based philanthropies working hard to tackle local challenges while driving lasting change. Please help me show appreciation to those committees for all the work in putting this conference together. While you're here, we hope that you will take advantage of everything that Leading Locally has to offer, from inspiring plenaries to peer-led sessions to opportunities to connect and build relationships. And there's even an opportunity for you, yes, each and every one of you, to be featured at Leading Locally. Here's how. Please visit the poetry wall, which is on the second floor near the orchestra breakouts, to add your voice to our collaborative poem, and/or visit the video booth, which is on the third floor near the escalators, to record a quick video to share more about what's special about your community and also share your aspirations for your community. The main reason that I'm here before you is to recognize the 2024 Council Award winners. The Council Awards program recognizes excellence in philanthropy and honors leaders for their dedication to exploring creative ways to advance the common good and to find solutions for complex issues. Our first award winner is Tiffany Benjamin. Tiffany Benjamin is being recognized as the 2024 Outstanding Corporate Philanthropy Leadership Award. As CEO of the Humana Foundation, she's building a new strategy centered on eliminating barriers in health. This award is in recognition of Tiffany's bold leadership at a crucial time in our society. Her work to build trust with partners and communities during the pandemic and beyond has led to meaningful and enduring positive health outcomes. Tiffany, can you please stand and be recognized? Thank you, Tiffany. Now, in its 40th year, the Distinguished Service Award is presented to an individual recognized for demonstrating trust, integrity, and courage consistently throughout a career in philanthropy. This year's award is going to none other than Darren Walker, who has served as the president of the Ford Foundation since 2013. Darren's tremendous legacy at the Ford Foundation is marked by ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of a world where people have the power to shape their lives and achieve their full potential. In doing so, Darren has enabled efforts to transform communities in the United States and across the globe. In today's plenary session, we're going to explore how we can collectively move from rupture to repair, and Darren will join me in this conversation to share his perspective on this topic, drawing from his leadership journey and the work that the Ford Foundation is doing. Please help me congratulate and welcome Darren Walker on receiving this honor. Absolutely. Darren, thank you for joining us. We certainly don't take for granted the opportunity to share just a few minutes with you. The Ford Foundation has been doing work globally related to polarization and the impact that inequality has on polarization. Will you please share a bit about how you and the foundation have moved this work into a priority?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you all for being here. I remember my first council meeting conference 25 years ago when I was a program director at the Rockefeller Foundation, and it was a really transformational experience for me in being introduced to this world of philanthropy, which for me at the time, having come from a nonprofit in Harlem with a small budget and a small staff, it was like going into another world, because it is another world.
It is.
So you ask about the issue of polarization and how we came to polarization as a foundation. Part of it was the shift in our work when I became president to addressing the issues of inequality because we saw the correlation of growing inequality and growing polarization. The data were very clear that societies where there was growing inequality, there was also present growing hopelessness, lack of trust in institutions, a sense of disaffection by the citizenry, more vulnerability to misinformation, disinformation. All of those things happen in societies where inequality is growing. And inequality 12 years ago was clearly entrenched in our country, and it is worse today. And so it's not a surprise that we are more polarized. The question is, what are the strategies that allow us to be able to imagine a world where there is less polarization?
Thank you. And when you talk about a world where there may be less polarization, it is easy to get caught up with what's happening in this country with so much that is occurring. But your work, your grant-making work, has taken you to 11 regions across the world. Can you share some lessons that you've learned in other places that might help inform the work we're doing here in the United States?
I mean, I think it's really important that when we look globally, because often we say, well, in this country they do it this way and it worked. And the United States is a unique place. And when you talk about other countries, when you take data from a Nordic country that has a very different context, a very different demographic, a very different history, and use it comparatively, it doesn't always work for us, or from a country on the African continent, because we are the only country like this. Like, this doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And so when you talk about a multiracial, pluralist democracy, like, it doesn't exist like this anywhere. And so when you're trying to compare apples to apples and say, so what worked in this country? There are things that you can look at. There are places where polarization I think has been arrested. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that, surprisingly, is leadership. And having leaders who seek that objective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is very hard to reduce polarization when you don't have leaders who seek that as a goal. Right. And so one of the strategies has to be, can we ensure that we have leaders who share that objective?
Good, thank you. Just a few minutes ago in the second episode that Theater Mood just performed for us, there was a discussion about hope. In these challenging times, Darren, where do you find reasons to be optimistic about the future?
Well, it is so easy on any given day to be depressed, mm-hmm. disgusted, dejected. But we are in the business of hope. We're the only sector in our society who is in the business of hope. And we see that when you have a site visit, and you see that when you meet the recipients of the scholarships that the Community Foundation does, whatever that may be, you see that. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I personally draw on the strength of the people who came before me. And I think about their journey and how they remained hopeful. So I think about Fannie Lou Hamer. Mrs. Hamer was a semi-literate black woman in rural Mississippi who walked those dirt roads carrying the American flag, saying, "My country 'tis of thee, this is my country," and demanding that it be accountable for the words in those founding documents. I think of James Baldwin, a queer black man like me, who, in spite of his rage at America, believed in America. I think of Ida B. Wells, who was simply trying to tell the story, the truth, and they burned down her newspaper. And so I think about them And then I think about the privilege that I have, that so many people have made possible. They believed. Langston Hughes believed in his great poem, Let America Be America Again. He starts the first stanza, let America be America again. America never was America to me. He is expressing his rage that he, as a black gay man in Harlem in the 1930s, is contained, and his physical capacity to go anywhere is determined by the color of his skin, his ability to in any way advance. But he ends the last stanza, but oh yes, one day America will be. He was talking to me. He was talking to all of us and saying, one day, and that's your work. And so that's how I remain hopeful in spite of the daily assault on my nervous system and on my sensibility and my natural, because I believe that optimism is a courageous sign of resistance. And again, I look at my people, I look at black people in this country over 400 years. There has been no more population of Americans more hopeful and patriotic, believing in this country, believing. And so I better be hopeful.
I appreciate what I took so much away from everything you said, the iconic names of the past who still inspire us today. When you talked about the business that we're in, philanthropy, the two Greek root words, phileo meaning love, and anthropology of humankind, the love of humankind, keeping us all inspired. Darren, it's been an honor to speak to you. Thank you for sharing just a few minutes of your incredible journey. The insights that you've shared, how philanthropy can have a role in moving us from rupture to repair, are truly inspiring. And now we will have the opportunity to hear from three storytellers who have been living this question in their personal and professional lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please, again, congratulate and thank Darren Walker for joining us.
Please welcome to the stage Sharon Hobenshield.
Amahithlo, good morning. Doyak sip hilch dil Dakota, Willem lach yipdit. I want to acknowledge the Dakota Nation whose territory we are on today. I'm happy to share a few words from my Gitxsan language. It is a language that my mom is fluent in and one that I am trying to learn in my 5th decade on Earth. This fracture and many others are part of my lived experience growing up in what is now known as so-called Canada. My grandparents were my first teachers of what it means to be Indigenous. I would visit them often, and every visit would start the same way. It would start with a hug from my grandfather, and he would tap my shoulders and feel my head. He was blind, and so I imagined that this was his way of seeing me. And then he would pray over me, and it would be the same routine when I would go to leave. My grandmother was somewhat less emotive, but she would always gift me with something. Sometimes it would be a piece of fruit, or a candy, or a rolled up dollar bill that she would magically pull out of her bosom. I grew up with blended ancestry. My mom is Gitxsan, and my dad has German settler roots. But I've always identified as Gitxsan, although I know that my lighter skin has afforded me the luxury of fitting in compared to my mother and other Indigenous people with darker complexions. Yet, I have felt the sting of racism, such as the time a university instructor told me in front of my peers that the only reason I got into an academic program was because I was Indigenous, completely dismissing my intellect and eroding what little confidence I had as a 20-year-old. These experiences are far less traumatic than those of my mom, who attended Indian day school, where assimilation was the goal and abuse the tool. These experiences remain with her in her 8th decade on Earth, especially at night when I hear her trying to wake up from her nightmares. I fortunately didn't attend residential school, although I could have, as the last one closed in 1997. I was fortunate to grow up with my community and my culture, yet I know the negative impacts of residential school and other colonial acts in Canada. So I'm very familiar with this theme that we are speaking of today, knowing the despair of intergenerational trauma, yet having those rich traditions that I grew up with from those teachings from my grandparents, and knowing that we have wisdom that has nurtured and sustained us since time immemorial. Yet it saddens me to know that for many Indigenous people, like my mom, healing may never come. For close to 150 years, the Canadian government, administered by Christian churches, removed close to 150,000 Indigenous children from their families and from their communities, again with the goal of assimilation. Or as one government official stated at the time, to kill the Indian in the child. In 2008, the Canadian government established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which had a mandate to educate people about the residential school's impact and to facilitate reconciliation between Indigenous people and the broader Canadian population. The chairman of this work was the late Honorable Murray Sinclair, who stated that for Indigenous societies to function properly, they must teach their children to answer the great questions of life. Where do I come from? Where am I going? Who am I? And why am I here? He further stated that these children need to know the stories of their grandparents, their parents, their ancestors, their heroes, and their villains, and that these stories then create a collective story and connect us as a community. However, for many Indigenous children in Canada, now survivors and descendants, that collective story has been broken. At the Kw'umut Lelum Foundation, where I work as the executive director, our goal is to ensure that children can answer these great questions of life. And we do this through our Snawaith for Success approach. Snawaith being the Coast Salish word that describes teachings from our loved ones. And so we take children and youth and we connect them to elders who teach them their language, teach them who their ancestors are, and teach them that they do belong. We also take children and youth out on the land in our traditional harvesting program, where they learn how to hunt and how to fish. And they learn to take the gifts of Mother Earth and treat them with respect through ceremony and sustainable practices. They learn not to waste any part of an animal. And so they are taught the value of reciprocity and responsibility, and knowing that whatever they catch, they must share. And so these teachings instill in our children that abundance is not about what we have, but what we can redistribute back to our families, our communities, the land, and for future generations. Equally integral to our work is education. Despite the hard work of Minister Sinclair and the countless residential school survivors, commentary such as, "Why don't they just get over it?" remains. And so, part of our work is education. We work with donors, collaborators, and the public to teach them the truth, tell them the truth about our history and our rich traditions. And in doing so, we are hoping that we are combating the stereotypes that we are all alcoholics and that we get everything for free. Our work in Indigenous-led philanthropy is both rewarding and draining. On the good days, I am deeply honored to be activating the cultural strength of our ancestors. On the bad days, I am frustrated that I have to continually translate and defend our way of being as meaningful and having impact. But lately, a new sense of dread is keeping me up at night. I worry, like many, that whatever progress we've made for equity and inclusion is at a very fragile state. So I ask each one of you, those of you in settler philanthropy, or whatever location that you're sitting here today, for two things. First, to trust that we as Indigenous people from your communities have the wisdom and tools to create a path forward, and that our teachings of interconnectedness and relationality have something to offer the broader community that can be an antidote against polarization and capitalism. Second, that you take these stories that are being offered to you today as a motivation to act. The work from rupture to repair cannot just be the work of the oppressed. It will take each and every one of us as truth tellers, as change makers, and as activists. And each of our children, every one of our children, deserve to tell a better story, a story of connection, a story of equity, and a story of shared community across all our nations. Doyak Sipnissen, I thank all of you.
Please welcome to the stage Jessica Ford.
I'm from a small rural Arkansas town called Redfield. And like many rural, small Arkansas towns, everybody knows everybody. There's a church on every corner, and most people are related. And when I'm there, I'm not Jessica Ford, I'm Tom and Debbie's daughter. And for the most part, people feel safe. 2 years ago, I was here at the Council on Foundations. I sat in a breakout session where I heard one of my communication peers talk about how their community responded to a mass shooting. I took lots of notes, and I remembered the names of the partners that they suggested that they used, and they talked about how they dealt with the media and the donors and some of the struggles that they had and the lessons that they learned. And I remember thinking, I hope I never have to use this. But it turns out that the information that I learned that day changed my life. I came back to Arkansas, and I called those 2 partners that they suggested that we work with and learned some amazing information. And these 2 partners are the Mass Violence Survivors Fund and Victims First. These 2 organizations have worked more than 50 mass shootings in the last decade. And everyone that works for these organizations has lost a loved one to a mass shooting. They have some tremendous best practices and lessons learned, and they've literally written a do's and don'ts of what communities and the media and politicians, what they can do to help communities begin to heal. I'll never forget that at the end of our call, they said, "Call us when it happens." On June 21st last year, a gunman opened fire in a small town called Fordyce. And Fordyce is about 45 minutes from my hometown. It has a population of about 3,400. And 4 people died that day, but 29 other people were there, and they were either injured by gunfire or experienced severe psychological trauma because of what they witnessed. Arkansas Community Foundation, we struggled a little bit with what action we should take because we knew what we knew. We had learned this information from these partners, and we rightly assumed that nobody else in Arkansas probably understood what kind of philanthropic response was about to happen and what needed to be activated. So we had to ask ourselves, if not us, who? And what was true then and is even more true now, we realized and know that community foundations are uniquely positioned to respond in moments just like this. Because we know the nonprofits, we know the donors, we know the partners, we know the politics, the media, and the culture. So I called the head of the Arkansas State Police, and thankfully he took my call because it turned out this was his first mass shooting too. He connected me to the mayor of Fordyce, who is actually a full-time scrapyard operator and a part-time mayor, and he doesn't even have an email address. But we talked on the phone, and I'll never forget pacing in the conference room of our office and talking to him and saying, "Mayor, I'm from Redfield." And he said, "Oh, yeah, fish over there." So we connected a little bit. And he was hesitant to allow folks from the big city, which in Arkansas, Little Rock is the big city, and folks from outside of the state to come in. And these partners that we wanted to bring in weren't Arkansans. And so while he was hesitant, he let us come in and he let us help. We were grateful for that. So with guidance from the partners, we put together a local steering committee. And this included clergy and mental health care providers, law enforcement, and you can see our friend Mayor John McNichol down there. We were tasked with putting together a process and a protocol for how the funds that were raised would be distributed. And we had to ensure that it was done with transparency and equity, and that it was trauma-informed. And this is where things, if not already difficult because of what had just happened to this community, they became very challenging. Because these partners were from out of state, and they were fantastic, and they could answer every question that was asked of them, and they knew everything that needed to happen. But the smallest town that they had ever worked in had a population of 16,000 people. And for Fordyce, at 3,400, culturally, they were just, a universe apart. So the community foundation had to become a cultural bridge between these fast-talking East and West Coast types and this scared, traumatized town. We had to flex every form of capital we had and draw from every community development playbook that exists. Ultimately, we were able to raise the funds, and we facilitated a process that, if ever challenged, we could defend. We were very proud of that. And we learned so many lessons along the way about the do's and don'ts of helping a community heal following something like this. I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Miss Melinda. She was born and raised in Fordyce, and she played basketball at Fordyce High, and she is a woman of deep faith. And on June 21st, she was just going grocery shopping. While she was in the store, she thought she heard fireworks because it was the Friday before the 4th of July. She saw someone near her fall to the ground and begin to bleed, and she realized that it was gunshots. So she grabbed the person next to her, and they ran into the meat department and hid under a counter. It took a long time for law enforcement to draw them out because they were terrified. They were frozen in fear. And when she finally came out, they walked them back through the grocery store, and she had to step over the bodies of her friends and loved ones. And that day, she started having panic attacks every day. And she'd never had a panic attack before. And she didn't know that a panic attack has physical symptoms. So she thought she was having a heart attack and would literally sometimes fall to her knees. Right after the shooting happened, the media came into Fordyce, volunteers came, nonprofits showed up, and they handed out gift cards, and there was a little bit of therapy that was available for those who wanted it and needed it. But after about 2 weeks, the media cycle dried up, and the volunteers left, and the donations stopped coming in. But Arkansas Community Foundation and the partners that we brought in from out of state, we were still there, and we were still listening. At one point, Miss Melinda said to me, "Jessica, I feel like I've lost my joy, and I don't know how to get it back." And this session is called From Rupture to Repair. And I wish I had a more perfect bow to tie all this up for you, to say, Miss Melinda's doing great, and everybody in Fordyce has the resources and support that they need, and everybody's getting the appropriate therapy. But it's not quite that simple, because grief isn't linear, and the nature of repair is really complex. And one of the most rewarding things I've ever done was on Christmas Eve, I drove down to Fordyce, and I was able to hand deliver those checks to the 29 people that were there that day and to the 4 families who had lost loved ones. And while the checks were modest, I'd like to think that they represented a little bit of power that those families could have back, a little bit of hope, and for Miss Melinda, a little bit of her joy would come back. Ms. Melinda now has new resources at her disposal, and she has a whole new community of people that she can call when she's having a panic attack. She's having them less often now, maybe once every 2 weeks or so, but she has a group of people that she can call, and I'm really proud to be one of those whenever she's struggling. Thankfully, for community leaders and for leaders like those in this room, there is a playbook that exists for how you can be ready for something like this. Let what Arkansas Community Foundation learned help you. You can find it here at this QR code and download it, or it's on our website anytime. And it can help prepare you for when this happens in your community or your state. Hopefully, your organization never has to deal with something like this. Because to be honest, Arkansas Community Foundation, we struggled just a little bit. We We wanted to make sure that we weren't experiencing mission creep and that we stayed in alignment with our values, but we'd do it again. We learned a lot and we'd do it a little bit differently, but we'd do it again. So Fordyce reminded us that we do more than just raise money and establish funds and make grants. Fordyce showed us that we are a bridge. We're a bridge between the survivors and the state agencies that they had to navigate, a bridge between this out-of-state, fast-talking West Coast partners and this traumatized, scared community. We were a bridge between the donors that wanted to help because they had no other way of helping and they wanted to show their love and support, a bridge between them and the survivors that needed it. Maybe most of all, we were a bridge between despair and hope. As foundation leaders and community leaders, please know that you are the bridge and that you can start preparing now. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage HB Lazito.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Can you remember a time when you felt connected to another person while experiencing something rare, unexpected, and beautiful in the world around you? Maybe it was in the puppy room this morning. We had a scene in the puppy room. I started my day there and it was wonderful. If it was not in the puppy room, wherever it was, think of that moment for yourself and hold on to it. In my 20s, I started a journal of all the most beautiful things that I had ever witnessed, and the rule for myself was that I could only add something to it if it was more beautiful than the thing before it. Billowing fabric on a summer evening lit up by a bonfire at a party, the iridescence of a beetle's wings while on a swim with a friend. The transcendence of a total solar eclipse shared among every person within hundreds of miles. I came to realize that it was really a journal of all the times that I was experiencing awe and wonder. Wonder and awe are self-transcendent emotions. They help us get outside of ourselves while we're having experiences within ourselves, demonstrating to us that we don't yet have all the information about the complexity of our world, and yet, somehow, we are still experiencing it. Right now at Out in the Open, we're looking at the role that wonder, awe, and imagination play within social justice movements, and how these emotions, and importantly shared experiences of them, can create opportunities for people to build relationships across difference. I'm going to talk about wonder, awe, imagination, and curiosity as tools, and about the importance of fostering these experiences within ourselves and each other, within movements for justice, and within funding practices. I grew up as a queer and trans kid in Penobscot territory in the central Maine woods in the 80s and 90s. I would spend hours outside wandering and smelling the musty yet sweet air and talking to a tree that I had named Little Pine. I also had human friends. My best friend Michael, who I still text with daily and who helped me with this talk, lived across the street and through the woods. I loved hefting piles of slick seaweed attached to barnacle-covered rocks on the shore at my great Grammys to find tiny green crabs scuttling underneath. I was constantly in awe of the vastness of the ocean and of the whole universe within the smallness of a tide pool. In these early years, I mostly thought about the world around me and not much about the world within me. In middle school, I remember seeing the front page of our hometown newspaper the day that a photo of two queer people kissing took up the entirety of the space above the fold. They were celebrating the passage of a 1997 anti-discrimination law offering legal protections to LGBTQ people in Maine. My palms got sweaty, not unlike now, because for one of the first times I felt seen, but I also didn't want to be seen seeing. Until that newspaper, everything I had known about queer people, mostly from pop culture, was that we lived in and belonged in cities. That photo was the first time I remember knowing for sure that there were other queer people in my rural place. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, voices from the living room interrupted me. A family friend that I had known my entire life was calling these people in the paper disgusting. He said that they were just doing it for attention. My eyes snapped open, searching the darkness of my room for something that would tell me this wasn't happening. My heart was beating so hard, I could hear it in my ears. This person that I loved and played cribbage with and went fishing with thought that I was disgusting when he thought I couldn't hear him talking. Not long after, I learned about Charlie Howard, who was Maine's Matthew Shepard, a young gay man who was killed by a group of teenagers by being thrown off a bridge in downtown Bangor in 1984. I began asking myself if I could love the woods and rural people and rural culture and be a queer and trans person. I started to wonder, did I still belong in this place that I had always belonged to? In 2014, I became the executive director of Out in the Open because I came to realize that there were millions of other people like me who needed a place to explore all of this. A place that was trying to answer these questions while working towards the collective liberation of all people. A place where I could use my sense of wonder to help us get closer to a world that works for everyone. At the time, the conversation about ruralness and LGBTQ people was in a very different place than it is now. Of course, we have always existed in rural places, but acknowledgement within the mainstream LGBTQ movement, let alone within the broader public, was nearly non-existent. As a trans person and a first-time executive director, then, in my late 20s, it was a bold choice to start an organization with that focus, hoping to shift experiences and national narratives from home in our small town. But it was something I knew I needed, and I imagined others did as well. In 2015, we held our first Out in the Open Summit for rural LGBTQ people. We taught hands-on rural living skills like nose-to-tail butchery and chainsaw safety. We shared both knowledge and questions in the room about class experiences and about how prisons impact rural communities. I could feel the magic we were making. At the end of the event, one person said that it was important to them because loneliness gets in the way of fighting injustice. For the past 11 years, we've used art and cultural organizing to build the community and power of rural LGBTQ people. Awe and wonder are main drivers in our work. 2 weeks ago, I'm still a bit tired, we hosted our 12th summit where I taught greenwood spoon carving as a meditation practice. Last fall, we facilitated an audio retreat to help community members tell their own stories and reshape narratives of who we are and can be. This spring, we're designing a program where we take people with differing political views to experience total solar eclipses and engage in deep relationship building towards bridging division. Later this summer, we're raising a timber frame structure on the land we bought last year on a dirt road in our county. This work is by and for LGBTQ people, and at their core, these projects are really about supporting people to be in touch with curiosity. They provide transformative and reparative experiences to help us get outside of ourselves in order to gain a deeper understanding of self and others, to reconnect with rural traditions we've been told are not for us, to boldly say that we belong in rural places, and to find out what else there is space for if everyone in our communities accepts that as a foundational truth. Because the alternative is not good. We've been living the alternative in rural places for many years. People who love rural communities but don't feel like they belong in them leave. Those with access to wealth buy up second or third homes, and we all experience conflict when the realities of rural life don't match a pastoral picture that has been widely marketed. The stories we're told nationally of deep division widen gulfs among us, and the cycle goes around and around. We need to do things differently to get us somewhere different. Our work has been motivated in part from my early hurt with the newspaper, but also from an early experience of healing the following summer, where I got to start answering the question of if I belonged in that place. My mom's friend, Mari, asked if I would like to come and be a counselor at her nearby art camp. Mari was the first out queer person that I knew personally. She was a photographer, but she was also always working in some new medium. One morning at our all-camp meeting, Mari announced that for the first time in many years, a hot glass shop would be returning to camp. Literal cheers erupted from the crowd. Screaming 5-year-olds who had no idea what this meant, alongside screaming 35-year-olds who had some idea of what this might mean. Everyone all together thrilled by something none of us had ever tried before. After a few days at the torch, I learned to encase things in clear glass, and I found I could make a whole world in a bead. An experience that reminded me of tide pooling when I was a kid. When I was making glass, everything else fell away, and I was just there in the woods with the other people around me just as enraptured as I was. The confidence I felt by reconnecting with my sense of wonder at an organization led by rural queer people helped me know that I belonged, even when so many others were telling me that I didn't. We are in an extended and ongoing period of rupture. and in an extended and ongoing period of repair, globally and nationally within our towns and cities and among individuals. Experiences of awe and wonder led by and co-created with rural LGBTQ people can help transform our relationships and culture. Someone watches the full moon rise at one of our fellowship retreats, and they internalize their shared experience of awe. They begin to feel a greater sense of belonging. When they go home, they start talking to neighbors they used to be afraid of at the country store, and that means they're now added to a community phone tree. They're available to help when an elder needs support during a harsh winter. These kinds of seemingly small transformations are actually monumental shifts in the way that we can all relate to each other. How can you help yourself and others you work with experience awe and wonder so that you can connect in unexpected ways? How can you help move big and seemingly impossible but very needed ideas forward? Your communities and all of us really need you to show up courageously right now. I invite you to be bold, to exercise and utilize curiosity, to fund work led by trans people, to fund work that supports LGBTQ people being able to stay in and help transform the rural communities that we love. To not write off projects focused on wonder, awe, and imagination in this fraught time as being frivolous or unnecessary. Find what it is that helps you feel a sense of wonder and use that to transform the world around you. And find me this week if you want to talk more about social movements and solar eclipses. Thank you.
I'm Kayla. And I'm Kayla too. And we're from the Sobrato organization. And we love our Bay Area community. Specifically, we are coming in from the Muwekma, Ohlone, and Ramaytush territories. And we know that its history is deeply rooted in the values of self-determination.
We also want to give a shout out to North Fair Oaks and our other unincorporated territories in the Bay Area, and just shout them out for their amazing undocumented communities and the resilience that they show and they demonstrate every day.
My name is Obiekwe Okolo. I'm from Washington, D.C., and what makes my community special, more specifically my Bittersweet Foundation community, is we are a community of artists and creationaries dedicated to sharing beautiful stories of human resilience all over the world with photography, film, and writing.
Hi, I'm Nancy Van Milligan from the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque, Iowa, masterpiece on the Mississippi. And what do I love about my town? Well, it is a beautiful place. We've got bluffs and the river and beautiful people, kindness, and lots of giving people, and lots to do, and I think giving hearts. So,
hi, I'm Alexandria Dawson with the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. And Flint is special because its strength isn't just in its story, but it's also in the people who write it.
Hello, I'm here to tell you what a fantastic community the city of Chicago is. Chicago is special because it is a place of imagination. Did you know that the Ferris wheel, the Tootsie Roll, the zipper, and the automatic dishwasher were all invented in Chicago? We are a people that imagine great things, and I can't wait to see what the next decades and centuries hold for what will come out of Chicago.
I'm Dondre Young, just happen to work at the Council on Foundations. And Flint is special to me because I'm a Flintstone, we're Flintstones, and we rise regardless of the situation.
My community is Northeast Minneapolis, and it's special because it's walkable, it's a mix of a lot of different cultures and beautiful parks, and it's just a place I feel honored to wake up every morning.
What makes my community so very special is that we collectively work together to solve problems. We come together, we talk, we disagree, and yet we ultimately know that we have the same value and we have the same vision, which is helping to see our community be more inclusive and more prosperous for everyone.